Hello, everyone. This is Rick Tobin again with some hints and ideas about preparing yourself for emergencies and disasters. It's been pretty interesting around this area in south central Texas lately. We even had ice and roads shut down here in San Antonio. Austin got hit real hard, and Dallas, a total mess. And these are the kind of things that I've been talking about that are going to become more common interruptions. I guess I don't have to say anything to anybody in Buffalo, New York. Or anybody in the West Coast, especially California, with the rains they've had this year. These kinds of things are going to become more intense and more difficult for people to get through conveniently and comfortably in the future. Well, tonight's topic is about basically how to keep your records in place and keep yourself covered when things shut down. Now, we've had power outages here for a couple days. If you had to go to the store and you couldn't use your credit cards, and that has happened. Just today, I couldn't get gasoline for my car because the system in the store was all shut down. They wouldn't even take cash. That can happen. I remember during the COVID weirdness, and I don't want to get into too much of that, some places wouldn't take cash because, well, they were told you could get COVID on paper money. Believe me, strange stuff happens all the time these days. People get all kinds of misinformation. But let me give you the best shot I can. You should have a ready copy on a flash drive of some kind. I know all of you think you have all this stuff on your phones, but if your phones go down and they don't have power, at least you can find some place perhaps put a flash drive in. It should have all the stuff that you need to prove who you are. And baby, has that become weird lately. I'll tell you about that in a minute. So you should have actually that flash drive with all the key data and so forth, and also paper copies. Copies of what your cards look like, your information about your banking, your wills, your other documents, your mortgage documents, your car registrations, all of that stuff that needs to be covered in paper. Sometimes they won't take digital anymore. I can't tell you the weirdness that's going on that one. But I guess people think that if they don't have the actual hard copy in front of them, it isn't real. You should also have ready cash available. Now, some strange things are going to happen in this country in the next couple of months. I'm not going to do predictions on this, but let's just say there may be some financial implications, especially with all the layoffs that are happening right now, and they're going to continue to happen, that you'll have to consider the best ways to cover yourself with funding. I don't know what the situation is on your bank. You know, the bottom line of the truth is when you put your money in the bank, it's their money now, not your money. You may think differently, but that's not really how the system works. So it's good to have some sort of survival funds available for you so that you could cover costs if you couldn't get things out of your bank, you couldn't use your credit cards, and other things. Now, I'm not suggesting everybody run out there and buy silver and gold and all of that. Some people are, but many people cannot. But you should have at least something that allows you to do some general merchandising for food, especially if you have to. Excuse me if I have a little bit of congestion in here in Studio C where I'm at right now. I don't heat this inside of my apartment, and it's 40 degrees right now, which is much warmer than it was for the last couple of days. So there are also some considerations for identification that came up recently for me that was shocking. I have had security clearances up the wazoo all over the country and never had anybody question my seal of original birth from the hospital that has the seal of North Dakota on it. Well, I couldn't get my driver's license this time in Texas because unless the state sent me a registered birth certificate, my real birth certificate was considered irrelevant. I was shocked. I've never had anybody say anything like that to me. So If you don't have a state registered certificate, certified birth certificate, anything else you come up with, they're not going to accept it perhaps. And I don't know where things are going now that the state has to prove that I exist, but you better have paperwork to back up if you have to evacuate an area, move somewhere else. And I want to talk about that movement that you might have to do somewhere else. Do you know about the uh, three principles about movement? It's the three ups: uphill, upwind, upstream. So for most threats, you want to go away from the threats that are the most common in your area. Be ready to plan for that. That's why you have those maps I talked about in another presentation. And make sure you have enough of those maps in your car too. If you're just struggling real quick to get them out of your house and you're traveling, well, they're not going to do you any good. But if you have to cross a border and you don't have documentation about who you are, I'm not saying that there will be times when you have to actually leave the United States because things are so bad, but if you don't have a passport, baby, you're not going anywhere right now. And the passport issue is going to be considerably more difficult to get after some of the things happen in the next couple of years. So get those now, get them in place, and protect them like crazy. I made the mistake of throwing an old one away, and that's caused some discombobulations on getting a new one. Anyway, it was way out of date and stuff, so I made some mistakes on that. I don't want you to. Keep the old one. Make sure when you're getting a new one, even if it's out of date, bring the old one in. So keep your documentation, and that means especially for your kids too. Can you prove who your kid is? And I've often said, get fingerprints, get footprints. I know that's not, what do you mean footprints? Yes, get footprints of your children along with updating their pictures, and keep that in this hoard of documentation. Now, if you're uphill, upstream, upwind, I suggest looking for a safe place that's at least 100 miles away from what normally gets struck by the hazards in your area. Now, you can keep it in a bank, or you can keep it with a friend if you think that they'll be reliable, whatever you need to do. I have some mixed feelings about bank vaults these days. As you know, the federal government has started to break that veil and go into vaults and take everything out of them because someone may have stored something there illegally and they're taking everybody's stuff out of the vault. That I find troubling. So I don't know that I would recommend that as much as I used to anymore. That's difficult. I also found out many years ago, if there is a banker's holiday, if the banks have to shut down for whatever reason, people go crazy and do things, they're going to shut off the vaults as well. You're not going to be able to go in and get things out of your vault area. I verified this with a bank I used to have, whose name I will not mention anymore. I had to explain to them what a banker holiday was. They were that uninformed. But if they shut down, you can't even get into the vault. Think about that. And no matter what your bank tells you, believe me, if that front door is closed, it's closed. Well, and the ATMs may be down also. Um, One of the reasons, even though I don't heat this room for the sake of saving power and so forth, I live in what's called a honey hole. Now, those of us in emergency management who've worked in utilities too know that there are certain protected areas, and we don't talk to the public about this a lot. If you're near a hospital, police station, fire station, and sometimes some of the bigger banks and shopping centers, those areas are first to come back on power, or they may be protected so that they don't go out of power at all, even during almost worst conditions. It doesn't make it 100% sure. I've lost power here for short periods of time too, but most of the time, those honey holes are really a good place to be if you're buying a house or you're renting. I was careful about picking one here because before Cinda passed, we had to be close to a hospital so we could get her in soon enough. So I'm lucky to be in one of those. I knew what it was when I came here. I've talked to the management here. They know about it too. But you might want to look if you're considering moving and you're worried about the power outage potentially in your area because of natural disasters outside of an EMP, forget it. That won't help you. Find out where the honey holes are. Now, as far as that paperwork I talked about, if you're taking it somewhere and this is critical paperwork and you're worried about its continuity, laminate it. Now, I know some people will say, well, there's some records you can't laminate. Well, hooey. If you have to have it and it gets full of water or it's underwater or you're wherever you're storing it 100 miles away or whatever, it gets doused and something falls on it and it's not protected, well, you've lost the paper. So that's something to think about. Also, for those, and I'm at fault on this one too, and I should have it. You should have those medical bracelets or necklaces. Because if somebody finds you and you're in a bad way and you don't have all your documentation, that's the one thing the EMT folks and the people in the hospital will know. Oh, that's what's going on. Now, I have a DNR. I was thinking about putting maybe a tattoo on my chest that says DNR, do not resuscitate. But if they don't know, they're going to do the best practices that they have. So that's part of the documentation is if you need to have some kind of medical condition that you have known to people who are trying to work with you on an ambulance or in a hospital, please get those braces on your neck, bracelets or some kind of necklace and put that on. Well, I've covered a lot of stuff here tonight. It's cold in here. I don't want to do any more. But I'm just telling you, paperwork and proof of who you are and what things are that you own and how to get a hold of people, all the phone numbers, everything else, you really need to think about that. And in my next talk, I'll talk about the first 10 plays perhaps and a little tool you can have that'll save you a lot of time. You can walk out the door and have almost everything you know because you can't grab everything or you lose it on your phone. And this is something you need to have. We'll talk about those first 10 plays next time. Thanks a lot for listening to these. I hope they've been useful for you. Take care and find your safe place, uphill, upwind, upstream. Unless you're next to a volcano, do not go uphill during the volcano explosion. Have a great time out there. Stay safe and happy Valentine's to everyone.